Okay, we're talking about the second part of the Origin of the Work of Art essay, the work and truth, and we're talking about how two things happen in the artwork. The truth as illumination is itself illuminated, and the world is set up. And so Heidegger, we said, gives the example of how a Greek temple with a Greek god in the middle worlds a world or founds a world, and in turn opens up a context of meaning and gives meaning to reality and founds meaning. We talked about the Gospel of John and how the New Testament and the death of Christ does that. And this is on 166, 167. He talks about in the temple work, the first, this is on, in Basic Writings, in the temple work that first fits together and at the same time gathers around itself the unity of those paths and relations in which birth and death, disaster and blessing, victory and disgrace, endurance and decline acquire the shape of destiny for human beings. The all-governing expanse of this open relational context is the world of this historical people. In other words, possibilities, the meaning of being, the meaning of reality, the meaning of things for people is what opens up in this artwork. So an artwork is beyond simply mere art. This is about religion. This is about founding a world, okay? And this is on 168, even more important passage, very famous passage where you get the sacramental nature of the artwork. He says, the temple in its standing there first gives to things their look. And by look, he's thinking eidos, their being, their form, their meaning. The temple first gives to things their look, and to men, humans, their outlook on themselves. So it provides a sense of, it allows for people, it gives things an interpretation, and it allows for Dasein to interpret itself. That's what a good work of art does. It interprets the world, okay? That's the sacramental nature of the artwork. It interprets the world. It opens up a world, okay? This view remains open as long as the work is as a work, and as long as the God has not fled from it. It is the same with the sculpture of the God. A votive offering of the victor in the athletic games, it is not a portrait whose purpose is to make it easier to realize how the God looks. Rather, it is a work that lets the God himself be present and thus is the God himself. Okay, that's important. Notice this, that he's thinking of things like icons. That, you know, if you're familiar with the Eastern Orthodox tradition or the Byzantine Catholic tradition, they have this idea about icons. Icon is the Greek word for image. Very famously, it says in the New Testament, Jesus is the icon. He is the image of the invisible God. He's the icon of the invisible God. But in the Byzantine church, I think I have an icon over there. I'll get it. Icons are supposed to be windows to the other world, okay? And he's thinking about, in other words, an icon will make present the reality of something very much like a sacrament, okay? Jean-Luc Marion, who's started as a Heidegger scholar, now is a heavyweight French intellectual in his own right, has said, he's written about the difference between an idol and an icon. The idol and the icon. The idol is something that closes off, whereas the icon makes something present. An idol actually, I think, reflects back to you yourself and becomes narcissistic, whereas an icon opens up the world. But notice what he said here, that it is a work that lets the God himself be present and thus is the God himself. Think of something like the Eucharist, right? The Eucharist is something where God is present, but, you know, it is Jesus, but it's not Jesus, right? It's as if Christ is being present in a different way, right? I mean, is that the full reality of God? Well, in one sense, yes. In one sense, no, right? It's the same thing with Jesus, right? He says, the Father is greater than I, but no one comes to the Father except through me, right? And Philip says, I mentioned this before, Lord, show us the Father, and that'll be enough. And he goes, have you been with me this long and you still don't know me, Philip? This is John 14. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? He who sees me sees the Father. In other words, there's this weird relationship between image and original that a sacrament or Christ makes present this other reality. The work of art makes present something, and it is even not possible to say this is this. So we say, of course, Jesus is God. We say the Eucharist is God. The Eucharist is Jesus. But there's still a difference there, okay? That's what a work of art does. It's a mediated immediacy. Karl Rahner puts it this way. He calls a sacrament something like that which expresses itself in what is other than itself in order to become itself, okay? So in other words, it's the body-soul relation again, right? I need my body to communicate, the soul. He continues here. The same holds for the linguistic work. In the tragedy, nothing is staged or displayed theatrically, but the battle of the new gods against the old is being fought. The linguistic work, originating in the speech of the people, does not refer to this battle. It transforms the people's saying so that now every living word fights the battle and puts up for decision what is holy and what is unholy, what is great and what is small, what brave and what cowardly, what lofty and what flighty, what master and what slave. And he talks about Heraclitus' fragment there. A great example of this too is the way Muslims and Islam in general understand the Quran. When you read the Quran, Muslims believe you're really listening to the words of God, right? This is a very sacred act, okay? I think, well, Catholics believe this too, but certainly Protestants believe the Bible is the Word of God. It's the literal Word of God. That's why in Islam too, it has to be read in Arabic, because it's literally God's words, okay? God is present in the reality of it. Same thing, we understand this in the Catholic Church as the Eucharist, but equally so, God is present in his word, in his proclamation of the word, okay? So this is what Heidegger is getting at, a sacramental notion of artworks, a sacramental notion of artworks. And in this sacramental notion of artworks, the world is interpreted, and in turn we can interpret ourselves. And moreover, and we'll see in the next video, illumination itself is illuminated. Now we have to try to stitch those together. It's very simple, how is illumination, or how is illumination the worlding of a world? Well, it's that illumination that allows for reality to be illuminated in its possible ways to be, in its varied possible ways to be.